I'm Connor Parrish, project manager with Trout Unlimited, located in Bozeman.
I'm Jeff Dunn, former project manager with Trout Unlimited, and I regularly work with the Gallatin River Task Force in Bozeman and the Big Sky area.
So today we're just going to give you like a general tutorial of how to survey culverts. Jeff worked with Matt Mayfield with Trout Unlimited to come up with an app where we could get volunteers to go out and collect field data on culverts. And it's really important to get out and collect this data. The Forest Service doesn't have a lot of staff capacity to run around and survey the hundreds of, how many, you think hundreds?
Yeah, hundreds.
Hundreds of culverts all over the district. And so with just a little bit of training, you can get out and collect some really valuable data using an app. And then we can share that information with land managers and they can make decisions on prioritizing removal of culverts. Why would we want to remove culverts? A lot of times they got installed for what reasons? They were undersized.
Yes,
Historically, you know, trying to save money, putting in smaller culverts. Eventually over time they weren't sized correctly for the stream, and so they start to have issues, and they can become fish passage barriers or become risks of actually like blowing out and sending a ton of sediment down into a stream.
So when we're evaluating culverts, we're trying to determine if there are fish pass barriers. You see this culvert right here, and we look for certain features of the culvert. So you have the length of your culvert, you have the width of your culvert and the diameter of it, you have how much water is flowing through the culvert, you have if there's a vertical drop at the bottom of the culvert, or if there's stream bed materials in the culvert. So these various characteristics determine what can make fish pass through culverts. And your ideal situation is you have a culvert that has a natural stream bed that has the natural slope of the stream. That would be kind of what we would consider a perfectly passable culvert. As you move kind of up the spectrum, we want the culverts to have a relatively low slope, because as the slope goes up and it gets steeper, it's harder for the fish to go up there. We also prefer to see shorter culverts instead of longer culverts, because as the culverts get longer, it gets more challenging for the fish to navigate through there. Other considerations, as an example right here, when there's a drop at the outfall, it makes it extremely challenging for fish to make the jump up into there and then swim through there. Other considerations, the depth of the water in the culvert. Fish need a certain depth of water to be able to swim up through. And as you do these surveys, another thing you want to think about would be kind of the size of stream you're working on. So if you get to a stream that's really, really small and might not really even have the potential to hold fish, then you could probably just mark the culvert and that it exists and move on. And we'd probably be looking at streams, from this size and up as potential fish-bearing streams. And one of the important things we like to do with this aquatic organism passage assessment is to get field photos of the site. And that makes it really easy for us project managers and resource agency personnel to take a look at these things on the ground when they don't have the time or resources to get there. So we like to really focus on taking good quality photos that really give people a perspective. And we certainly want to get one, looking at it from the downstream end that shows the entire kind of site overview, kind of in the scene that you're seeing from this video angle, and then one close up of that downstream end of the culvert that would really give a sense of, how big that drop is there, if there is one, what materials might be in the culvert, how much water might be flowing through there. And we also like to get, a side picture of it so we can kind of see the overall length of the culvert. And then we also want an upstream view so we can see, what the culvert looks at the upstream end. And the things we notice, how embedded is that culvert, how far is it sunken down, how much road fill is on top of that culvert. If that culvert would fail, how much sediment would go into the stream. And if there's any damage to the culvert, is it collapsing on one side, is it blocked by wood? These are all kind of considerations that impact both fish passage as well as kind of just management of our road networks.
Now that you have background on why we need to survey culverts, let's talk about what you need to bring to the field. Before you leave cell service, you need to download a couple of apps on your phone. Both Survey 123 and ArcGIS Explorer can be found on the Apple or Google Play stores. You also need to download an offline map. There's a link to some detailed instructions that show you just how to do that in the description of this video. Next up, a clinometer is a crucial piece of equipment that you need for surveying culverts. These things can run a few $100s, so we don't expect you to have one of these on hand. Luckily, if you go to your app store and search for a clinometer, there's a bunch of free different apps that you can use. So before you leave service, please download a clinometer app and familiarize yourself with it. So really the only equipment that you need is a fully charged cell phone with all the apps that we talked about, a tape measure that measures in feet up to 50 to 100 feet, and then also some kind of a measuring stick with different measurement increments on there in tenths of feet. All right, now that you've got all your equipment and your apps downloaded, you need to open up your phone so we can figure out where we're going to go for the day. We're going to start by navigating to the ArcGIS Explorer app and opening it up. Once you open it, you'll see that there's a map there. This is the map that you downloaded before you left cell service. It's the Gallatin Road Stream Crossing Survey. When you click on the map, you'll see this really large area with a bunch of black triangles and colored dots. The black triangles are unsurveyed culverts. You can zoom in on the map, figure out where you want to go for the day to go do your culvert survey. After you drive out to one of the areas that you're interested in surveying in, you can turn back on your phone and look at that same offline map. In the upper right-hand corner of that map, you can press that button and it'll show your position on the map. Then you can zoom in and click on the culverts that you're interested in surveying. Then once you click on one of those triangles, your screen should look something like this. The triangle you're interested in, or the culvert, will light up highlighted in blue, and then a little pop-up will come in with a link that you can click on. Once you click on that link, it will automatically send you over to Survey 123, where you can start to survey the culvert. Once the app loads, it'll ask if you want to sign in. Click continue without signing in. You don't need to have an account in order to survey these culverts. You'll then be taken to this screen, and down at the bottom you'll see it says collect. Click on that blue circle there and it'll take you to the next step. The next screen will ask for your name and also for you to enter the date and time in which you're doing the survey. It'll ask for your location, but it's already associated with that icon on the map on the top. So you're good to go once you get your name and date in there. The first few questions are super straightforward. What type of crossing is this? This one's a culvert. You may encounter a bridge or the absence of a crossing. Wants to know if it is gravel, paved, or native. Gravel would be crushed rock. Native would be like rounded rock that comes out of a stream. Then we get to structure type. There's a couple different types of culverts. The majority of them that you're going to find are round or slightly squashed. Then it asks for what type of material is it. They're typically either metal, plastic, or concrete. This one looks like it's metal. And then it asks for the number of culverts or barrels. Typically you're just going to see one, but it is pretty common to run into 2 or 3 in some locations. The next questions are also super easy. What kind of condition is it in? If it's not rusting or cracked, then it's in good condition. Is there any blockage upstream, like wood or debris built up on it? And is there any water flowing through it? Next up is taking photos. This is a super important step. Even if the data gets messed up or something goes wrong with the survey, if we have the photos and we can look at them, we have a pretty well-trained eye and we can usually glean a lot of information just from photographs. So take your time when doing these. So here's Jeff taking those photos. First, the inlet viewed from upstream. Then he's going to move on over and take the upstream view from the road here in just a second. After taking that upstream from the road photo, he's going to flip right around and go ahead and take the downstream view from the road as well. Now he's going to walk down and hop in the creek bed. It's really important to get good pictures down here. He's going to take the outlet close-up from downstream. And then we forgot to take a video of it, but you also want to take an outlet close-up from the side. That helps us really tell how much of a drop there is at the bottom of the culvert. This first measurement is probably the most challenging of the entire survey. We're going to measure bank full channel width. Bank full is the location in the stream channel where high spring flows typically leave the stream channel and move out onto the floodplain. This typically results in the development of stream banks, which you are all pretty familiar with. Indicators of bank full include a lack of vegetation or changes in vegetation type, and also changes in channel topography. Because bank full can be pretty hard to identify out in the field, I included some information. There's a link in the description to this video that you can follow and learn further about how to identify bank full in the field. This location is pretty easy. Jeff and I can clearly see where the vegetation scour line is, and we go ahead and measure from that point. If you're having a hard time locating bankful, walk up and down the stream a little bit until you can find a place where you can see some more clear characteristics of where bankful channel would be. So Jeff and I go ahead and stretch our tape and take the measurement to the nearest tenth of a foot. This one was right on 14 feet. It's also important to mention that this measurement needs to be taken from the upstream side of the culvert. Next up is culvert width. This is a super simple measurement. You're going to need to grab that measuring stick that you brought with you that has those different increments marked on it, and you can see Jeff quickly marking this. It's also important to note out that the culverts come in pretty standard sizes, so they usually are, rounded to the nearest foot. The app will automatically calculate a width ratio for you, and that will create a scoring criteria that will help to score the overall culvert. Next, we're going to measure the culvert slope or gradient. So break out your cell phone or clinometer if you're lucky enough to have one. You can take this measurement in a few ways. One way to do it is to use your measuring stick that you have, lay it across the culvert if it's exposed like this, and then lay your phone on it and take a reading of whatever it says the level is. The other way to measure slope or gradient of a culvert is to stand on each end of the culvert, and then you need to take a reading using your clinometer or your phone by measuring a point that is the exact same height of where you are taking the measurement from. For example, in this case, Jeff is a little bit taller than me, but we pre-measured that the top of my head is pretty much exactly where his eye is. So Jeff points the clinometer at the top of my head and takes a reading off of the instrument, and that is what we put down for slope. You can do the same thing with your survey partner. The taller of the two of you should be the one doing the measurement, and then locate that same place where their eye is located on their survey partner, and then when you take the reading, aim it at that location. You can use both methods if you like to kind of get an idea and take an average, and then it's just going to lump it into a couple different categories. So, less than 1%, 1 to 3%, and then greater than 3%. So it's just a rough estimate. Next is culvert length. This is pretty straightforward, so just measure from the farthest end of the culvert to the upper end. Once again, culverts are usually pretty standard in length, so they typically can be rounded to the nearest foot. The next few data points are all going to be taken on the outlet of the culvert. So you might have to get your feet wet here, wade in with your measuring stick, and we're going to take a couple measurements. The first one is outlet invert, so that's just the area from where the water is pouring out of the culvert to where it's meeting the top of the water there. Next, you only have 3 options for scour pool at outlet. You can pick deep, shallow, or none. So it's pretty straightforward measurement here. This one's very deep, so it was really easy to go ahead and check that box. The next question is there any material in the culvert? Is it embedded, scattered, or none? This should be pretty straightforward. This one has no material except for a rock, so we're just going to go ahead and select none on this one. The next thing here is water depth at culvert outlet. This is just measuring that scour pool. So once again, this one's a little bit redundant, but it calculates a depth score, and then it totals all of the fish passage totals for the entire survey. That total score will determine if it's passable, questionable, or a possible barrier. Now that you're all done with your survey, you can hit that little check mark in the bottom right, and that will submit your data to the app. If you're out of cell service, this image will pop up here saying that your survey was completed, but that it needs to be saved in your outbox. Once you finish your survey and you go back to your map, you'll be able to see that that culvert has been surveyed, and it will have a color corresponding with its passability. If you're in cell service, this data will instantly be uploaded to the cloud and updated on the app. If you're out of service, it'll just be stored on your phone, and then once you get back into town, reconnect to service or to Wi-Fi, it will then be uploaded, and the app will update the map as well. And that's really all there is to it. Once you've done one of these, it'll become really straightforward, and I think it should be a really effective way to get out there and survey a lot of culverts. If you have more questions, once again, there's a link down in the app to a document that has more detailed information about this, and also additional information on how to download those apps, including the clinometer app. So if you have any questions or you want to volunteer, please reach out to me. My email is also in the description of this video. Stick with us for just a few more moments here, and you'll get to hear from some of our partners. They'll talk about the success of this project in a previous year and how we're hoping to build on that going forward.
Hi, I'm Emily O'Connor with the Gallatin River Task Force.
I'm Jeff Dunn, a former project manager with Trout Unlimited, and I regularly work with the task force. And last year, the two organizations launched a citizen science project to assess aquatic organism passage here in the Upper Gallatin Watershed. And we had a group of high school students go out and they assessed approximately 40 culverts and identified several of them that were fish pass barriers. And now we're moving forward trying to identify solutions and do design plans to improve those culverts so they're more fish friendly.
So we're calling all volunteers, whether you're a task force volunteer, Sims, Trout Unlimited volunteer, or just a member of the public, to come out and join us for some citizen science and help us map these culverts.
For more information on Trout Unlimited's Gallatin Home Rivers Initiative, follow us on Facebook and Instagram.